Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again. Today I get a chance to do something I've wanted to do for a number of years, and that's get a chance to share with you the Something Obscene company J-Cape. It's a knife that I've personally been interested in ever since the first variation came out, and I've been excited about it, and it's just been something I've never been able to grab for myself. The times that I've been able to just go out and buy knives that I just wanted to buy, my priority list was already so delayed that I had a whole bunch of knives ahead of it, so I never got the chance to get one. And then luckily, about a week ago, a buddy of mine on Facebook, who goes by Nicholas Piccolo, offered to send me his so that I could play with it, review it, show it to you guys, share it with you. And it's not just any J-Cape. This is going to be a special limited variation that was offered through Gecko Customs. So for those that don't know, the J-Capes have been unbelievably popular. Felix has a huge hit with this knife, and there have been many dealers that he did exclusives with. So you could get a lava flow carbon fiber inlay version from one dealer in specific, or you could get a different kind of inlay version specific to that dealer only. And that caused people to really spread out across the internet and find all of the different custom variations or customized variations that were available. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to break away from, not really break away from my typical structure, but this is going to be a much more structured video. So here's the way it's going to go. We're going to start off here with the intro that I'm doing now, obviously. And then we're going to get into the TLDW, the Too Long Didn't Watch, that will summarize the highs and lows, the pros and the cons of the knife in general. And then following that, I'll give you the specs, and then I'll do the review with my personal thoughts and give you some of the backstories, because I've talked to both Felix with Something Obscene Company, and I've talked with Steven at Gecko Customs to kind of get a better sense of what this knife really is, what makes it special, and why people sought out this particular version. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the packaging and take a good look at that real quick. This is the standard packaging that all of the J-Capes would come in, and this is a cardboard box with a magnetic flap. And there's a whole bunch of stickers in here. I'm sure some will be exclusive to Gecko, and some will be regular SOC stuff. Certificate of authenticity. This was issued by Gecko Customs, by Steven. So it shows the date that the work was performed, what number it is, the inlay material, which is the Gecko carbon fiber, and the variation, which is V4 J-Cape, SOC, Gecko Custom Works. Is it Custom Works? Yeah, Gecko Customs Knife Works. And then the signature from Steven. There's the SOC fist. Another SOC sticker. And what do we have here? And a Gecko Customs Knife Works sticker. I'm going to keep this kind of in the background here just so that it's there and everybody can see it, and hopefully you guys will go visit his Facebook page, his Facebook group, see the kind of work that he's been doing. All right, so on the V4, let me try and get this out of there. On the V4 J-Capes, you'll receive a knife, obviously. You'll get 2 pocket clips, and depending on whose exclusive it was, they chose whether to have the lightning bolt cutout, the lightning bolt shape clip installed or the lightning bolt cutout clip installed. On the Gecko, it looks like it was the lightning bolt cutout clip that was installed, unless Nick changed that himself once he received his knife. I don't know. And they all come with an additional set of hardware. Now, what makes this knife pretty cool and pretty unique is the fact that while, yes, you do see some hardware, the pivot and the 2 backspacer screws, all the other hardware is hidden. You have a blind screwed clip, and you have hidden hardware that's actually securing the inlays. That's important because it's not junking up the overall look by having a whole bunch of screws in the inlays. Now, what you can do, and what makes the V4 so special, is that you can open up this knife, take the screws out from the inside, remove these inlays, and then change them out, swap them out for the multitude of other inlays that were offered. And whether it's because you own multiple variations of the V4 J-Cape, or you've decided to order just an inlay set, you're able to do that yourself and completely customize the look and make it unique to you. And if you decided, hey, I don't want the black hardware, you could swap it out if you had a set of the satin hardware from another variation. This one happens to come with the black hardware, both installed and the additional hardware. Okay. For those that don't know, the J-Cape is actually made by Riot Knives. And I think you could tell pretty easily from the quality of the grind, this beautiful compound grind where it's the hollow primaries and the flat tip, very reminiscent of other Riot-made compound ground knives. That is the Chavez 229, still one of my absolute favorite designs. And then the Varga Knives VBR. Riot does an exceptional job on their grinds as well as their heat treat, as well as their finishing. So they perform and look really, really good. Okay, let's go ahead and break into the TLDW, and then we'll get into some of the stories and the fun and all that kind of stuff that goes with all of this. Okay, pros for me, number one, are going to be the overall size and the ergonomics. It's a very neutral handle, so you don't have a lot of crazy curvature or angles or anything else. It's really made to fit a large majority of collectors. So it really doesn't matter what size your hand is. This is probably going to fit you very well and be very comfortable in the hand. Another plus will be the fact that it's Riot made, so the action is fantastic. I wish the detent was a little bit stronger, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not saying it needs to be a finger breaker by any stretch of the imagination, but when I compare this specifically to my VBR, the VBR, you can preload on that flipper tab a little bit more without accidentally kind of deploying it and failing it, not going all the way to lock. This one, if I really were to put just a little bit of weight on there, you see I can get it to flip a little bit and not get it to full lock. Not a huge deal because it really is a fast and smooth action, so it feels really, really good. And they offered these in a thumb stud variation, a flipper variation, and a variation that had both the thumb studs and the flippers. So you could have had multiple deployment options if that was your goal. And pretty much all of the biggest distributors had carried these, so they were pretty easy to get your hands on. And there will be future runs of the J-Cape as well. It's not like they're being retired. All right, another pro for me is honestly, the Gecko carbon fiber. It looks really good, great colors. So obviously you have your black and gray of the carbon fiber, then you have this lime green and this electric blue that comes through. The blue is definitely subtle, so it's not going to pop as much as the greens, and there's some yellow in there as well. Very slick, very cool. The other thing that I really like is this thumb relief here, this thumb ramp, and the jimping that was done. It feels fantastic. It's exactly where my thumb wants to land, and the jimping is perfectly cut, so you've got a lot of grip without it being a finger shredder. I really like that a lot. Lock bar access is easy, even though there isn't a large cutaway on the presentation side. It's just right, and there's just enough jimping on there that you could very easily snag that lock with your thumb, no problems whatsoever. Man, that action. Overall design aesthetic, I think, for me is the biggest plus. It looks aggressive while not being cartoonish and so ridiculous with crazy curves and grinds and stuff that don't make sense or detract away from its usability, this knife is a really, really good EDC. It's a good, fairly compact size that still maintains a pretty full-size blade. It's got a great blade profile. It's got great grinds. It's going to be really, really good if you're looking for a knife that you're actually going to use. Next up would be cons, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. There is nothing about the J-Cape design that jumps out at me as a con, nor this particular version. The only con for me is the fact that right now, because it's so long after the fact, they're pretty much impossible to get. I'm not saying it's impossible to get on the aftermarket, or I'm sorry, on the secondary market. I'm sure there are plenty of people that bought multiples of these knives in different exclusive variations that are selling them. But right now, I haven't seen any for sale in the past week or two. Some are traded every now and then, but it doesn't seem to be very, very often. So if you miss the boat on these, you're going to be missing out again for a while until the next run comes along. And when I was talking to Felix on the phone as I was prepping for this video, he was about to tell me when the next release was going to be. And we got sidetracked in our conversation and we never circled back to it. So as I was making notes, I was like, oh, crap, I forgot to get the release date from him or remind him that that was part of the conversation we were going to. So unfortunately, that I don't know. If I'm lucky, or if we're all lucky, then Felix will pop in here in the comments section and answer that question for those that will be certainly curious about that. Now what I want to do is I want to get into the specs. I'm going to move this over here. We'll put that there and flash the specs up on the screen here pretty quickly. For those of you that read slowly, you're going to want to pause it right here so you can read all of the specs, because I no longer narrate through all the specs because it adds a few extra minutes to the video length. And with all the hot air that I spew, my video length is already long enough as it is. So, as I mentioned, it's a good, pretty compact size. It's not tiny by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, yeah, you got a 3.5-inch blade here, just like the VBR, and I'll give you a size comparison here in a moment. But it's a full 8 inches in overall length. It's a big boy. This version also is a little bit heavier than variants 1 through 3, because now the titanium on the frame is a little bit thicker because of the additional contouring that Felix wanted to add and the hidden hardware behind the frame. So there's no milling for lightning slots. Actually, there is, isn't there? Oh, my apologies. I thought there were no slots milled in there. Well, no additional, I guess. It's just the framework for the way that these are made for the inlays and everything. So you could see, I think, one of the screws right back there, if my lighting's decent enough, so that you could take the hardware out from that side. And I know there was a logo in here. I think it might have been the Gecko logo on the inside of the lock side. But anyway, it's not a particularly lightweight knife. It's not what a lot of people are going to want to EDC all the time. If you're used to carrying something like a Chavez, then you're probably going to be just fine because it's a little bit lighter weight than the Chavez. Let's get that open and side by side with the Varga Knives VBR. Put them butt to butt as all things should be. The VBR actually comes out a little bit larger. I'm surprised at that. Or is that really just a camera trick, the forced perspective? I think that might actually be it. Let's do this. Put them back butt to butt. Yeah, it was just the perspective is all that was. So they're really pretty much about the same size. I haven't measured the VBR in a long time. It's been years since I did the initial reviews on these. And I'm pretty sure it's 8 inches overall. Okay. Now I suppose we can get into story time. What I did was I called Felix up on the phone. We chatted for a bit about the J-Cape in general. And then I messaged back and forth with Steven over at Gecko to get some insight on where this particular model came from, why it's special, and what the cost was and everything else when they were being sold. So I'll go through that now. Steven says he's always carried a knife since he was a kid growing up in Texas and playing in the woods. And he was of the mindset that a lot of us were at early on, that even a $50 knife was an expensive knife. And then one day, a friend of his turned him on to more premium quality knives, and then he began to collect knives himself and grow his interest in different kinds and styles and makers and brands and things like that. What he had done initially was he wanted to have a lot of knives that were special to him and not just something that everybody else can go out and buy. So he was starting to send his own knives out to various knife modders on the internet and have things customized to his personal taste. You know, you anodize some hardware, or you do a little bit of finish work on it and kind of, make it your own. You don't always have to go crazy. It's usually how things start, and then you end up with, crazy shit like this when you start having people customizing knives for your very particular tastes. And then what you've done is you've made the knife special to yourself, but it may not really have a lot of resale value, because who knows if somebody else is going to like a very specific theme that you had in mind when you did yours. So as he was paying these other people to do these small modifications to his current knives, he would get them back and he would go, you know what, I'm pretty sure this is stuff that I could do myself. So he decided, since fact that he's got an art and design background, that he would just go ahead and make the leap and start modifying knives himself. Now, one of the things I want to clarify, you'll see people in Facebook knife groups and all kinds of other venues where people will be talking about custom knives, and people will erroneously bring out a knife that has been customized by a knife modder, and they call it a custom knife. It is not a friggin' custom knife. If I wanted to go out there and say this is a custom knife, I'd be bullshitting, because this is a production Chavez 229 that I had customized, modified to my personal taste. And while it is custom, whereas I dictated what I wanted to have done to it, and it makes it unique, and there aren't like 5,000 of these things running around, it's still not a custom. It doesn't fall into that vein. So that's one of the things that, I don't know, it's kind of always irked me. And, you kind of have to gently remind people as they're posting an inflated sale price on their custom knife when they're going to sell it on Facebook. Then you got to go, yeah, no, that's not a custom. It's been modified. It's been customized. It's not actually a custom. Anyway, so he decided to start doing that for himself. And as he was doing that, he would show his work to his friends, and then they would want him to do that to their knives. And the business kind of grew organically from there. And that's how a lot of these guys start. And that's also how a lot of knife makers start as well, is, making knives for yourself or your family members. And as more people see it, that you start getting requests, and then your business can then build up from there. Get that switched over. All right. Well, of course, 2020 rolled around, and it affected a lot of people. And it also affected Steven as well. I keep saying Steven. His name is Steven Stewart, for those that are unfamiliar with him. I apologize for not clarifying that earlier on. So because of the quarantine and COVID cutbacks and all that kind of stuff, Steven actually lost his job. And he decided, you know what, I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm confident enough in my skills. I've got a lot of people that really love my work and come back to me repeatedly. I think I can just go ahead and build a business from this. And that's what he decided to do. So with the support of his friends and his family and his current fan base, collector base, he was able to just kind of kickstart it and get things going. And it's turned into something pretty cool, I think. I was not all that familiar with Gecko Customs, to be perfectly honest with you, before this review. And as I've gone through and I've looked through his posts and his Facebook group where his fans come and talk about the knives that they've gotten and modified by him and showing off, and seeing his photo catalog of the work that he's done, I gotta say, it's pretty damn impressive. So I'm glad to see that, a small business like that can thrive and get to a point where they could do great collaborations with very well established bigger brand names to boost their business. In 2022, he did a collaboration with Kaiser Knives and they produced the Towser S. And this past year was when this project was born with Something Obscene Company. Hey guys, sorry for the interruption, but I promise I will make this very, very brief. I want to thank those of you that have joined and become channel members. You are helping to support the channel and helping to continue the growth. And if you've been considering supporting the channel in any way, shape, or form, because I do not have channel sponsors, I don't shill anybody's products, I don't get paid for anything, I don't do affiliate links, so everything is completely self-funded. If you'd like to help out and watch the channel grow and get more great content coming your way, please do consider becoming a member. By the way, he is about to release, when I say he, again, I should clarify, Steven at Gecko Customs is about to release his own design, mid-tech, kind of sort of like customized production knife. Those are going to be coming very soon. He and I have discussed it. I'm going to be reviewing his prototype when he gets it back in his hands because it's kind of on a pass around the country. And I really want to take a look at that and showcase that and show it to you guys and see if you guys are as excited as I am. All right, so basically, Steven lives about 45 minutes away from where Felix lives, and he had done modification work on other J-Capes in the past. He and Felix, I should say, had become friends. So Felix decided to offer him an exclusive, and it just worked out to be great that at that time, this Gecko pattern carbon fiber became a thing. So it really was a no-brainer, I think, to kind of pick which way to go. Man, it's just such a cool color combination. I really like how that looks. So they sat down and they planned out the design that they wanted to offer. And what they did was, it was 100 pieces. That's it, 100 pieces for the Gecko exclusive. And one of the interesting things that Steven decided to do was this right here. I'm going to focus there, zoom in. So you were able to get a custom lasered backspacer that represented what it was, and they are individually numbered. So there are only 100 of these that were ever offered in this particular variation. So it makes it exclusive, it makes it special, it makes it somewhat cool. We all collect shit. We all like things that are going to be special and limited, something that not everybody else is going to own. And that really is the appeal here for this knife. As you see right there, it is numbered number 89 out of the 100 that were made. Oh, I do like how that feels. I really do like how that feels. All right, let's get this back open, laid out here on the table. Now, let's talk a little bit about what makes the V4 different than the earlier iterations of the J-Cape. Because as I said, the J-Cape has been very, very popular over the past few years. And what you're getting on this is a slightly thicker frame, slightly thicker titanium, because now it's been contoured. Let's see if I can get a shot where you can actually see that it's been very gently radiused. It's nothing crazy. You know, it's not like the VBR. The VBR is, actually, I didn't realize this, but it's pretty flat right in the middle, because I always feel how radiused this is. I kind of figured the whole thing was very, very curved. It's not. So actually, the J-Cape has a little bit more curvature to the body than even the VBR does. So, see, even I learned something new here today. So the big thing about this was the interchangeable inlays, the contoured handles, and I guess some people had complained of the exposed detent track. So you were able to see, I don't know if it's visible in any of my other knives that are sitting out here. They're not. The detent track was exposed. So what they did was they lengthened the handle just a little bit more to completely cover that detent track so it's no longer visible when you have the knife open. And that's the kind of thing, it irks some people and most other people really don't give a shit. But it is a thing when you're doing a large number of production knives, you need to satisfy the masses. You need to make the changes that they're asking for. You need to consider what everybody wants because the whole goal is to sell a bunch of knives. You're not making a custom knife where you're selling one or two or three of that knife. You're relying on selling thousands in many cases, or at least several hundred, depending on whatever the MOQ is for the factory that you're working with. So in this case, Felix listened to the customers and he made the appropriate changes. He made one hell of a great looking knife and a good performing knife, and a knife that feels really, really good in the hand. And I think it's just about as perfect as it could be. Obviously, I really didn't have any cons as opposed to the pros. So, of course, I think it's very, very well done. So here's the thing. These were $500 if you bought the Gecko version. Is it worth the additional money for it to be numbered and for it to have the unique engraving on the back spacer and to have the unique color of the inlays? Well, only really you can decide that. I think it's really, really cool, but there were also other really cool variations as well. And on top of that, you could buy a regular, I don't want to say plain Jane, but you could buy a standard J-Cape V4, and you could purchase additional inlays to swap out. And by the way, Felix has also offered really nice titanium inlays and zirconium inlays as well. So there were a multitude of options that were available on these knives, and that really helped to personalize each and every knife to the customer that was buying it. And I really, really dig that idea. That's something that needs to be done much more often in this industry, is allowing you to kind of customize your own version and tailor it to your personal wants and needs. And at a small extra upcharge, you can't beat that. By the way, speaking of small upcharges, this coin was not part of the packaging. If you got the Gecko version, you were able to purchase one of these. I think it was about $10, if I'm not mistaken, for the coin. So I appreciate being able to show that to you as well. Overall, my personal thoughts on the knife are that it feels great. It obviously runs great and is finished great. And it's something that I would definitely want to have in my collection at some point. If he ever decides to sell this one, I might end up throwing an offer in, trading or buying or something, because I dig it. Is it worlds different from a bunch of other 3.5-inch blade flippers that have been out on the market in the past few years? It's not worlds different, but when you're able to do inlays on the backside, on the lock side of a frame lock, it adds a lot of character that typically doesn't exist on a frame lock. Typically, a frame lock, you just have the titanium frame. That's it. There's nothing else going on there. And then if you get into a bolster lock, the scale that's on the show side is then replicated on the backside. But this is not either one. It is not a bolster lock. It is an actual titanium frame lock with these inlays cut into the frame. In a lot of ways, that scale is going to act much like the scale would on a bolster lock. So when the blade is closed, this is nice and flush. When the blade is open, you'll see that little bit of a gap. That's something that's completely normal. Again, I'll display that here on the VBR. That is just the way it is because the lock has to move over to engage against the blade tang. So having the pivot collars on here, titanium on this side to be a contrast against the carbon fiber, and then carbon fiber on this side to have a contrast against the titanium. Another really, really nice touch. The inlays are perfectly done. They're very nicely finished, by the way. Sometimes these colorful carbon fibers, whether they're fat carbon or camo carbon, can be a little bit of a pain in the ass to finish consistently and get done very, very well. This is finished very, very well. Again, the inlay to titanium, it's almost imperceptible, and there's no flagrant gaps around the inlay cutout. They did a fantastic job there. I don't really see any voids in the carbon fiber, so these are really, really nicely done scales. I wonder how many pieces of carbon fiber are thrown away by trying to cut these teeny tiny little skinny pivot collars, because it's got to get delicate when it gets down that small. Regardless, it's something I don't really have to worry about, but I think that probably is a major pain in the ass for them to do. Nice stonewash finish on the titanium. It's a nice clean look. All the edges around the handle are chamfered perfectly, so you have absolutely no hot spots. You will feel the back spacer if you grip down really, really hard. You'll also feel the pocket clip, but they're not hot spots. They're just noticeable. I know that they're there. I can feel a little bit of that gear shape on the back spacer, and I can feel a little bit of the outline of the clip. Just tells me that they're there, but they're not bothersome in any way. So overall, I think the design and execution of the J-Cape in general is fantastic. For those that have been wondering, is it really all just hype? The J-Cape is hyped all to hell and back. Is it really as good as people say? Yeah, it really is. It's really, really well done. It's got a nice balance, a good feel between the blade and the handle. Handle's a little bit heavier, but not by a tremendous amount. And it feels great in the hand. The grinds are fantastic. The finishing is fantastic. The marriage of all the materials from the inlays to the titanium are fantastic. The pocket clip design, while maybe a little funky for some, it's really nice and functional. It does a great job, and it's very clearly designed specifically for this knife. It's not just an afterthought that was just kind of thrown on like, oh,
we need to put a pocket clip on there. What should it look like?
It follows in with the theme of the brand. Very, very well done. I would highly suggest, if you can get your hands on a J-Cape, particularly the V4, where you have the additional upgrades, if you have the opportunity to grab one, I would certainly tell you to do so. Many years ago, I told you that the Vargonized VBR was one of the best knives of its kind available anywhere, and I've heard back from so many people that took my advice and found one and bought one, and it instantly became their favorite knife. To this day, years later, people are still carrying them very, very often in their rotation and still very much enjoying them. And I feel pretty much the same about the J-Cape. I think that this is a really good size for a chunky, thick boy. Still a fairly compact feel, easy to carry in the pocket, and certainly going to be great on the utilitarian size because of that blade. And if you can grab a really cool addition, I mean, man, there were a lot. The Blood Money, I think, may have been the one that I was attracted to the most. That was the clear epoxy resin with the shredded currency, the shredded dollar bills, and then the fake blood in there. I always thought that was cool. There was a red lava flow against black DLC stonewash that looked really, really cool. There were a lot of really great additions. But I got to tell you, I think the first thing that I would experiment with is a base version, and I would probably get the zirconium inlays, because I got a big hard-on for zirconium. I think it's a wonderful material, and it looks super cool. So I'd probably do that first. But this is definitely a variation that I'm personally interested in. So I'm hoping in the future, as more J-Capes become available, I really hope that Steven does another run with Felix on them and offers the same inlay material, because I think it looks really, really cool. In some ways, the coloring is very subtle. In other ways, when light hits it just right, the colors just pop. So it's got a little bit of both. And I think it's a really cool balance. I really dig that. So for me, the J-Cape is an all-around winner. I really can't find any flaws that I would say run away, stay away from this knife. I think it's absolutely worthy of the hype that they have gotten over the years. And value-wise, I know $500 for an exclusive is a lot of money. I'm not gonna downplay that fact. But I think for A lot of collectors that are already spending that level of money on a knife. I'm not trying to talk to somebody who's spending $80 on their knives and they're not ready to move up. You got a ways to go before you're there, but you'll understand one day. You'll find that knife that justifies it and you'll be like, okay, now I get it. But for everyone else who will typically spend around $400 to $500 on their everyday pocket knife, I think that this is a worthy investment. I think if you can find one, grab it. I think that you're going to be very, very happy. You'll be able to justify that price pretty darn easily just from the first time you pick it up and start playing with it. And I think the packaging meets up well to the expectation of when you receive that knife. I think it kind of gives you that whole feeling as well. It's professionally packaged. It's got a nice presentation. You feel like you've bought something pretty special. And at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about. You're not buying just an off-the-shelf Walmart Kershaw, right? If that was all you were buying, you wouldn't care about feeling special when you opened your new knife. With something like this, you do get that feeling. And it's a nice feeling. And it's what keeps us coming back for more. It's what keeps us ordering and ordering and ordering. We can order a brand new knife, and before the damn thing delivers, we're already searching for another one to buy. That's that collector's mindset. And this is one of those knives that will satisfy somebody that has that collector's mindset. Anyway, that's all for me for now. Thank you guys for joining me as always, and I'll see you on the next video.